Hey, greetings, everyone. Lieutenant Colonel Alan West here, and welcome to the Steadfast and Loyal program.
You gotta light 'em up before they burn it down. Better dig deep and put 'em in the ground. Blood on their hands, they're hellbound. Save us all. Ooh, they're gonna burn it down. Save us all before they burn it down.
Well, hello, Patriots. Trebo, President, United Patriot Coin. Today's story time is back in a day when our currency represented real money. What I'm holding in my hand right here is a $10 gold certificate that simply states to pay on demand $10 in gold coin. To make that simple, this was real money, and this was a receipt representing real money. Fast forward to today, fiat currency, backed by the government's promise to pay. Let you understand that, right? If it was still backed by gold, this one coin would get you 220 gallons of gas at $5 a gallon. I don't have to tell you that would only get you 2 gallons of gas. You figure out what's going to get you further. Hard money, fiat currency. As always, stay safe, be prepared.
Hey, greetings, everyone, and welcome back to the Steadfast and Loyal program. You know, this whole thing about legal immigration and sanctuary cities, a lot of people are focused on New York, Chicago, other places, but we've got some problems here in the state of Texas. And it was just recently revealed to us, and some of us already knew about it here in Texas, of this area called Colony Ridge, which is kind of northeast coming out of Houston, Texas. And Houston, Texas is one of the largest metropolitan areas in the United States of America. So to talk about this issue of Colony Ridge, we want to speak to the person that really broke it out on a national level, and that's Spencer Lindquist. Spencer Lindquist is a field reporter at the Daily Wire, where he covers politics, immigration, and social issues. He was previously a contributor to The Federalist and a reporter with Breitbart, and his investigative work has been cited in the New York Times, the Washington Post, and Fox News. Spencer, thank you so much for taking the time to join us here at the Steadfast and Loyal podcast.
Thank you very much for having me.
What was it that got you interested in doing this story about Colony Ridge? Because a lot of people are not putting a microscope on what's happening here in Texas itself, where we should be doing a little bit more, I think, to stem the flow of illegal immigration, definitely not busing it to other cities and states. So what was it that gave you the impetus to look into this?
Well, I heard about this story and I had to go down and see it for myself because just hearing about it, frankly, wasn't enough. Something of this scale, it was something that we had to go down and see. So I traveled down there a few months ago and I took a helicopter over Colony Ridge. I drove through it to check out the size, the scale of the development, as well as the current growth that's going on. We noticed that there are a lot of construction vehicles there that are hard at work. This is a quickly expanding area. We don't know exactly how many people are there, but we can say it is massive, it is growing. It's probably roughly in between 50,000 and 75,000 people, with potentially 200,000 residents in the future, according to the developer. So I went there, I saw it firsthand, I saw the scale, I saw the conditions, which were quite alarming, and I realized that this is such an important issue because we're seeing what's happening at the border, but now we're also looking at it internally, right next door to America's fourth largest city. So this is something that we wanted to investigate.
When you were down there on the ground, did you get a sense that this is a place where law and order has not been extended to? I mean, it's kind of like the no-go zones that you hear about in some European areas.
So there's been some comments from Liberty County Sheriff Bobby Rader. He went on a local news program there, the Michael Berry Show, and he was saying that they do have, I believe it was 10 officers in the area, but people sometimes cite that rather misleadingly because they do not have 10 officers on duty at any given point. They have 3 officers on duty at the maximum at any given point. And the issue is we don't really know how many people are in Colony Ridge, so we can't accurately determine the ratio of crime to the population. We can't accurately determine the amount of officers per population. But we know that that is roughly between 1 officer for every 16,700 people and 1 officer for every 25,000 people. So we know that these ratios are far and away much worse than what national policing organizations recommend. And recently we have had that DPS surge, so we know there is an uptick in law enforcement presence. But that is something that has just happened in the last couple of months. And of course, this development has been around for the better part of a decade.
And we have seen recently the adverse effects it's having on the social services there. The Cleveland, Texas ISD is seeing an incredible growth in the amount of students it's having to bring in, illegal students. What was the most disconcerting thing that you really felt or saw in your time down there at Colony Ridge?
Well, I think one of the things that was most shocking about it to me was the fact that, again, this is just outside. It's about 40 miles north of downtown Houston, which of course means that it's very close to a lot of Houston suburbs. And I saw as I was flying through the woodlands and then to Colony Ridge, you see this drastic and very, very sudden change in conditions. You have nice upscale neighborhoods, and then suddenly you go into an area, whether you're seeing it from the air or on the ground, that frankly in a lot of ways doesn't look like the conditions that we're used to here in the United States. Portions of it do look rather third world. You've got areas that do not have adequate draining, adequate plumbing. You have contaminated water that the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality has found being dumped running off into local streams and bayous. So you see the environmental aspect, you see the fact that this is an area that most Americans, up until recently were not aware of, and it's right outside a major American city. So because of its proximity, because of its scale, and because of the fact that, frankly, it is difficult to find accurate information on the amount of people there, on their legal status, that is something that was concerning and something that I figured is warranted an investigation.
Now, how is it then that people that are here illegally are able to get the opportunity to, quote unquote, I don't know, are they applying for loans? How is it that they're able to come in and purchase property here in the state of Texas or anywhere here in the United States of America, period?
The financial model at Colony Ridge is really one of the most interesting aspects of it. As part of my investigation, I looked through at all of the marketing materials for Colony Ridge. First off, I couldn't find anything that was in English. It was just in Spanish, and that wouldn't be concerning in and of itself, but then you look into what they're actually saying in these marketing materials. We know that they're saying you do not need a social security number to buy here. They're saying that you can use your passport or your documents from your country. It uses that language, your country. Of course, that implies that these are people who are not from the United States of America. And there was even a very interesting admission in a New York Times piece profiling Colony Ridge. John Harris, he's the brother of William Trey Harris, and they're the developers behind Colony Ridge. And John said that we found land that nobody else wanted and people who couldn't buy anywhere else. And of course, that raises the question, why can't they buy anywhere else? Is it purely financial? It certainly doesn't appear to be the case. And these marketing materials very blatantly appeal to people who are in this country illegally.
With all things, when it comes to land development, you got to follow the money. And I think the most disconcerting thing for me and many others reading your story was the amount of political contributions and the political involvement, starting at the governor of the state of Texas all the way down to the local level representatives. Can you talk to that, what your reporting found?
Yeah, so we found that there was $1.4 million in donations from William Trey Harris. That's one of the brothers, one of the developers behind Colony Ridge. And his wife gave another $100,000 for a total of $1.5 million to Governor Greg Abbott. He'd also given money to other local politicians. So there was State Representative Ernest Bales, who actually drafted and proposed some of the legislation that granted Colony Ridge its municipal management district status, which of course is something that's a bit unique and peculiar to the Houston area. But the point is, he has been involved, at least in the form of financial giving and donations to these politicians. And this is something that's been going on for several years. Now it is just potentially having action taken on it in the special session. We know that right now they have not considered any legislation on it. So we're still standing back and waiting and seeing what they might do about it, because we've heard a lot of talk. We haven't seen any legislation yet, so we're keeping a close eye on it.
Do you know if any of these politicos, State Representative Bales, State Representative Briscoe Kane, United States Congressman Luttrell, and the governor, have you heard anything about them returning any of these political contributions that they got?
No, I've not heard anything about any of those individuals who you listed returning any of the donations. We know that Morgan Luttrell, he did actually sign on to a recent letter. It was led by Congressman Brian Babin, and every single Texas Republican in the U.S. House of Representatives signed on to this letter urging for legislation in the special session to address Colony Ridge. So there is a potential that some of these elected officials will pivot on Colony Ridge. And as they learn more about the development, we'll take some action. But that is still something that we have yet to see in any decisive way.
In your assessment, what's the propensity, what's the possibility that we could see, a cartel activity coming out of Colony Ridge? Because as you know, we already had that shooting there with the 9 times previously deported individual that, killed an entire family. With a semi-automatic rifle, which to me, how do you get a semi-automatic rifle if you're illegally in the United States of America? You've been deported 9 times. What's the propensity of cartel activity you would assess being there in Colony Ridge?
That's something that we've looked to law enforcement for, and again, this is one of the areas that's very difficult, frankly, because there has not been enough law enforcement presence there in the past, and we're just starting to get an increase in law enforcement. But we have had various different law enforcement officials come out and say that they do know that cartels are active in the area. Some have said that cartels are not actively engaging in their operations in Colony Ridge, but that there are numerous cartel members who live in the area. And of course, we can look to the financing model, we can look to the unregulated system that is used to buy this land, relatively unregulated system. And we can see that it is very, very attractive for people who cannot or perhaps may not want to get a mortgage through a traditional method, who don't have a social security number, who don't want their name tied to it in such an official way. So it is very concerning, and this is an area where the state, frankly, we do not have the numbers on criminal activity there that we may in other areas because of how under-policed it has been for so many years.
It's incredible to me that we would create that gap of security in an area, like you say, the 4th largest metropolitan area here in the state of Texas. Last question I want to ask you, will you be doing a follow-up on this, and what will be the focus of a follow-up investigation? Because I think you just kind of, opened up a little bit of this can. I'd like to see the lid come completely off.
We'll certainly have some follow-ups on Colony Ridge in the future, so we're going to be looking more and more into the development itself, and I think we're going to be reporting on some interesting facts surrounding Colony Ridge. So I definitely encourage everybody to keep an eye open, and those reports should be coming out here in the not-too-distant future.
Spencer Lindquist, how can people follow you and keep up with the great investigative reporting that you're doing?
Well, thank you. You can follow my work at Daily Wire, just dailywire.com, and you can see my investigative reporting there. And you can also follow me on Twitter. My name is Spencer Lindquist, and I'm looking forward to staying on the story.
Well, we appreciate you, and everyone down here in Texas really appreciates what you have done in exposing this story nationally, something that we are very aware of here in Texas. And we cannot allow to have illegal immigrant sanctuaries anywhere in the United States of America. So God bless you, young man. And you're the reason why I have great hope for the future of this United States of America and hope in restoring true investigative journalism. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much. God bless.
God be with you. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so very much for joining us for this episode of the Steadfast and Loyal podcast. Very special thanks to Spencer Lindquist of the Daily Wire for joining us talking about his article on Colony Ridge. And if you enjoy this podcast, this program, please click the like button, share it with others. And until next time, steadfast and loyal.
Before they burn it down.